The smell of roasted turkey floated through the house. Cinnamon, cloves, fresh pine. The table was already set. White linens, polished silverware, name cards written in gold. All of it, the planning, the cooking, the cleaning, was done by Allison, 9 months pregnant, exhausted, but still smiling. In the living room, Barbara, her mother, sat on the couch with her phone. Lauren, the younger sister, was curled up next to her, scrolling through TikTok. Neither of them had lifted a finger. Not one dish, not one thank you. Allison walked carefully across the kitchen, one hand on her belly, the other balancing a tray of cookies. She moved slowly, feeling the tightness in her back. Behind her, laughter echoed from the couch. "Allison's doing the most again," Lauren said, not looking up. Barbara chuckled. She always burns herself out trying to play Superwoman. Allison didn't respond. She just nodded and kept moving. The house looked festive, but the warmth, it wasn't real. It was paper thin. Allison's hands were trembling. Her legs felt weak. The pressure in her lower back had turned into sharp pain. She glanced around the room. Everyone was laughing, sipping wine, chatting under the soft glow of Christmas lights. No one noticed her wobble. Slowly, she lowered herself into the nearest chair. Just 5 minutes. Just to breathe. But then her mother's voice sliced through the room like broken glass. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing? That's Lauren's seat. Being pregnant doesn't mean you get to be lazy, Allison. Get up." The room fell silent. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations stopped cold. Allison looked up, stunned. Her face flushed red. Lauren tilted her head, smirking. "Seriously, Allison," she laughed. "You're not the only one here, you know." Allison tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat like glue. Her baby kicked inside her belly, a painful reminder that she wasn't alone, even when she was being treated like she didn't matter. The silence was thick, uncomfortable, sharp. No one moved. No one dared speak. Allison's eyes were fixed on the floor. She wanted to disappear. But then, the front door creaked. A cane tapped against the hardwood. Heels shuffled forward, slow but steady. And then, a voice. Clear, firm, unapologetically loud. "Yelling at your pregnant daughter in front of guests, shame on you, Barbara." Heads turned. There she was, Dorothy, Allison's grandmother. The one they said was too sick to come. The one no one expected to show up. She stood there in her winter coat, eyes sharp as steel, hand gripping her cane like a sword. The energy in the room shifted. Suddenly, Barbara wasn't in control anymore. It all started the day her father died. The house went silent, but Allison couldn't. Someone had to pay the bills. Someone had to take care of the family. And that someone was her. Barbara collapsed after the funeral. Grief turned into sickness. Doctor's visits, prescriptions, hospital stays. Lauren dropped out of college to cope, but mostly she just stayed in bed, scrolling. The world didn't stop, but Allison's world, it shrank. She worked full-time as an accountant and part-time as everything else. The ambulance bill, she paid it. The rent, she covered it. Lauren's phone, Barbara's therapy, groceries, utilities, heating, Allison. She never complained, because that's what a good daughter does, right? His name was Paul Hansen. Smart, kind. The kind of man who listened with his eyes, not just his ears. They met in their early 20s. While Allison was juggling bills and burnout, Paul brought warmth, laughter, hope. He didn't ask for much, just time, a future. Something they could build together. One rainy evening, he pulled out a ring. Nothing flashy, just simple, real. "Will you build a life with me?" he asked. Her hands shook, her lips parted, but the answer was silence. Then, finally, "I can't. Not yet. My family needs me." Paul didn't fight. He just nodded slowly, hurt in his eyes, but love in his voice. "Okay," he said. And that was it. They didn't break up that night, but they never moved forward again. And years later, when Allison stared at the empty side of her bed, she wondered if Paul still remembered what they could have been. Allison signed the lease with trembling hands. It was the first thing in years that was truly hers. A small apartment, 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy, but full of light, full of hope. She stood in the empty living room, twirling the key on her finger, whispering to herself, "This is mine." The very next day, Barbara called. "You're moving into a bigger place, right? So it makes sense we move in too." Allison froze. "Wait, we?" "Me and Lauren, of course." Barbara sounded casual, entitled. "You won't be able to raise that baby on your own anyway." And just like that, the light in Allison's new home began to dim. Lauren chimed in from the background. "Dibs on the loft room." She laughed like it was all a joke. But for Allison, it wasn't funny. It was theft. Emotional, personal, spiritual theft. Her safe space had just become theirs. Again. Barbara didn't scream. She didn't curse. She didn't threaten. She sighed. "I just don't feel well, sweetheart. I wish I could help more, but I can barely get out of bed these days." Her voice soft, fragile, almost loving. She'd say it when Allison came home late from work, when Allison paid the heating bill, when Allison cleaned up after Lauren. "You know I'd do it all if I could." But she didn't. She never did. Instead, she leaned into weakness, letting Allison carry the weight every single time. And Allison, she kept telling herself, "She's grieving. She needs me. I have to be strong." But love isn't supposed to be one-sided, and strength shouldn't mean self-destruction. The day after the Christmas party, Barbara posted a video. Soft lighting, sad piano music. Caption: "A mother left alone on Christmas night. She sat in the corner of the living room, face turned slightly away from the camera, eyes glistening like she'd been crying for hours. I didn't want to bother my pregnant daughter. I just stayed quiet, even though I was in pain." Cue the sniffles. Cue the fake tremble in her voice. Within hours, the video hit 100,000 views. Comments poured in. How could her daughter abandon her like this? That poor woman. "This generation, no respect for parents anymore." Barbara replied to each one with subtle martyrdom. "She's under a lot of stress. I don't blame her." But behind closed doors, Allison sat frozen, phone in hand, mouth dry, watching her reputation disintegrate in real time. That night, Allison couldn't sleep. She lay on her side, one hand on her belly, the glow from her phone lighting up the room. The video was still up, the comments still growing. She read them silently, one after another. "Cold-hearted daughter. She doesn't deserve to be a mom." Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed dry. She had cried too many times already. She stared at the ceiling, and then the question came, soft at first, but sharp like a knife. "Am I a daughter or just a maid? I'm 9 months pregnant. I pay every bill. I cook. I clean. I hold this family together. And yet I'm called lazy." Something cracked. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a shift, a realization. The moment when silence finally starts to feel like betrayal, not from them, but from herself. The house was quiet, not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses against your chest, heavy, suffocating. Allison sat at the edge of her bed, phone in hand, screen glowing in the dark. She opened her banking app. There it was. Scheduled payments, Barbara Reynolds. Monthly transfer, Lauren Reynolds. Rent contribution, Barbara. Medical copay, Lauren. Car payment, each one. A lifeline not for her, but for the people draining her dry. She tapped the first one, cancel. Second one, delete. Third, end recurring payment. Her thumb hovered over the last one. Then, tap. Confirmation screen, transfer successfully canceled. For the first time in years, Allison exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since the day her father died. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She just breathed and whispered, "It's over." The knock on the door was soft, but for Allison, it echoed like thunder. Wendy opened it, eyes wide, arms ready. Allison didn't speak. She just collapsed into her best friend's embrace. Years of holding it all in broke, shattered, right there on a quiet doorstep. Wendy held her tightly. No questions, no judgment, only warmth. Inside the apartment smelled like chamomile and cookies. The lights were dim, the silence was kind. They sat on the couch. Allison tried to find words, but her lips shook instead. Tears streamed down her cheeks. And finally, she whispered, "Am I wrong, Wendy? For cutting them off? For leaving?" Wendy didn't blink. She reached out, took Allison's hand. "No. You're just the only one in your family who actually knows how to love." The next afternoon, Wendy made a call. And just like that, a woman named Marissa showed up, sharp blazer, sharper eyes. She sat across from Allison, calm, clear, professional. "Wendy told me what's going on. Let's start with the facts." Allison reached into her bag. Shaky hands, heavy heart, but focused. She pulled out folders, receipts, transfer records, bank statements, screenshots of text messages, photos of Barbara at salons during her sick days. Marissa nodded slowly. "You've been financially exploited and emotionally manipulated. But the good news, you have evidence." For the first time in years, Allison felt like she wasn't crazy. She was just documented. She wasn't just a daughter. She was a witness to her own story. And now she was ready to testify. Allison didn't post a rant. She didn't write a dramatic caption, no crying selfie, no shaky video, just facts. She opened her phone, clicked New Post, uploaded 5 PDFs, medical bill receipts, monthly transfer summaries, credit card statements in Barbara's name, photos of spa visits, a receipt for a luxury purse dated 2 days after Barbara claimed she couldn't afford medicine. She added a simple caption, "While pregnant, I paid for everything. Now I'm reclaiming my story." And she hit post. At first, silence. Then the comments came. "Wait, she paid for all that? So the mom lied? This is disgusting. Using your pregnant daughter like a bank account? Where's that fake crying video now?" It spread fast. The algorithm didn't care about drama anymore. It cared about truth. And the truth was brutal. It started slowly. A few unfollows, a couple of brands going silent. Then came the emails. "Due to recent events, we are pausing our partnership indefinitely. This is no longer the image we wish to represent." Lauren's inbox became a graveyard of broken deals. One by one, sponsorships dropped her. Collabs canceled. Campaigns pulled. She posted a video trying to defend herself. Heavy makeup, shaky voice, fake sincerity. But the comments didn't buy it. "You made your pregnant sister stand? On Christmas, I can't believe I supported you. You're not just tone deaf, you're heartless." Her follower count plummeted. The likes turned to hate. The shares turned to mockery. For the first time, Lauren realized the internet may forgive ignorance, but it never forgets cruelty. The gas bill came first, then the electricity. Then the pharmacy called. Barbara's prescription was on hold. Payment declined. She tried logging into her account. Error message. Access denied. The rent office called next. "Miss Reynolds, your payment for January hasn't gone through." Barbara panicked. She called the bank. She blamed a glitch, a mistake, a system error. But deep down, she knew. Allison had shut it all down. No more silent payments, no more invisible lifelines. For the first time, Barbara and Lauren felt what it was like to live without a daughter who paid for everything. And it was cold, literal, and emotional. The letter arrived in a plain envelope, no return address, just a single line on the front, to whom it may concern. Barbara opened it with suspicion. Lauren stood behind her, arms crossed, brows furrowed. Inside was a letter, handwritten, clean, precise, and a copy of the lease termination notice. Barbara's hands trembled as she read, "I won't be coming back. I'm not your daughter, not your provider, not your punching bag, not your excuse. I am a mother now, and for the first time, I am my own. Please consider this letter my final goodbye and the end of any responsibility you once thought I owed you." Barbara dropped the page. Lauren picked it up. Silence. No screaming, no denial. Just the quiet sound of control slipping away. The room was cold, sterile, bright white walls and the steady beep of monitors, but Allison didn't hear any of it. She was too focused on breathing, on pushing, on surviving. Sweat clung to her forehead. Tears blurred her vision. Her hands gripped the bedrail like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. And then a cry, a sharp, perfect cry. Time paused, and everything that had broken her went silent. The nurse gently placed the baby in her arms. Tiny, warm, alive. Allison looked down at him, his fingers curling around hers. She whispered, voice shaking, "Welcome to the world, Lucas. I've been waiting for you for so long." And for the first time in years, she cried not from pain, but from something that finally felt like peace. The new apartment wasn't big. No marble countertops, no fancy view. But it had sunlight, and silence, and space to breathe. Allison laid Lucas down in his crib. The mobile above him spun slowly, stars, moons, and clouds in soft pastel colors. She walked to the small kitchen. There was a potted plant in the window, a chipped mug that read, "Best Mom Ever." On the wall beside the door, she hung a photo. It was old, slightly faded. Paul, smiling, holding her hand from years ago, before everything unraveled. She looked at the frame, touched the glass. No tears this time, just a quiet kind of warmth. Not regret, not longing, just a gentle reminder of who she used to be and the woman she was becoming now. It arrived on a Tuesday, a pale gray envelope. No logo, no stamp, just her name written by hand, Allison. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen that handwriting in years. She opened it slowly, almost afraid of what it might stir up. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Simple, clean. Paul. "I saw your post. I read everything, and I finally understood what I couldn't see back then. You were never cold. You were surviving. You weren't pushing me away. You were holding everything together the only way you knew how. So now, I'll ask you something I didn't have the courage to ask before. Would it be wrong of me to dream that one day it could be the three of us, you, me, and Lucas, starting over together?" Allison stared at the words. Her hand gently pressed the letter to her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just closed her eyes and let herself feel the possibility of beginning again. Allison sat by the window. Outside, the late afternoon sun spilled golden light across the floor. Lucas was napping, his tiny breaths rising and falling in rhythm. The letter lay in her lap, unfolded, worn at the edges from rereading. She picked it up again, read the final lines one more time. You, me, and Lucas starting over together. She didn't answer out loud. She didn't need to. Instead, she brought the letter to her chest, held it there, not tightly, but gently, like something sacred. And then a smile. Small, soft, but real. A smile that said, maybe. A smile that meant, I remember what it felt like to be loved. A smile that finally reached her eyes. There were no more roles to play, no more boxes to shrink herself into, no more scripts written by other people. Allison was no longer the good daughter, no longer the silent provider, no longer the emotional punching bag. She was herself, fully, quietly, completely. She didn't owe explanations. She didn't need forgiveness. And she sure as hell didn't need permission. With Lucas in her arms, she stood by the window, watching sunlight dance across his face. The past still there, but no longer defining her. What came next was hers to shape, on her terms, in her voice, at her pace. A woman once broken was now rebuilding, for herself and for the child who would grow up knowing what strength looked like, not from fear, but from truth. There comes a time in every person's life when silence is no longer strength, but surrender. Allison's story teaches us that love, no matter how sacred it may seem, is not an excuse for self-erasure. You can be a daughter, a sister, a partner, but if those titles come at the cost of your soul, then it's time to lay them down. Being strong doesn't mean carrying everyone. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is put yourself first. Because healing doesn't begin with apologies from others. It begins the moment you give yourself permission to stop breaking for people who never notice the pieces. If Allison's story moved you, if you've ever felt like you were giving everything but receiving nothing in return, then this channel was made for you. Breathe. Subscribe to Pieces of Soul for more stories of silent strength, quiet rebellion, and emotional rebirth. Because sometimes the most powerful transformation begins not with a scream, but with a whisper that says, "I deserve better." Hit the bell, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear you're not alone, and your story matters.